Getting the smile and confidence you've been dreaming about, all from the comfort of your home, isn't a total mystery with Byte clear aligners. Just don't be surprised if all your friends start asking, "What's your secret?" Begin by ordering your at-home impression kit today for only $14.95. Byte clear aligners are doctor-directed and delivered to your door. Treatment costs thousands less than braces, plus they offer flexible financing, accept eligible insurance, and you can pay with your HSA FSA. Get 80% off your impression kit when you use code WONDERY at Byte.com. That's BYTE.com. Start your confidence journey today with Byte.
And welcome back to Scarred for Life, the podcast where we open up old wounds by looking back at the films that scared us as kids. I'm Terry.
I'm Mary Beth in Montreal for Fantasia, so my hotel room is not cooperating.
and each episode, our special guest brings with them a movie that traumatized them as a child.
Y'all, this week we're so stoked. Our guest is writer and director Marcus Dunstan. He is the director of the Collector's films. He's the writer of Saw 4, 5, 6, and 3D, and the Feast films, aka one of my latest new discoveries that I'm obsessed with. And most recently, he directed the slasher #AllMyFriendsAreDead, which is out now on VOD. Welcome to the show. We're so stoked to have you here.
Thank you for having me. If not for you two, like, we don't get a lot of light put on us in the galaxy of options. So thank you for this moment. Thank you for this dais. You know what I mean? Like, we are so thrilled, and we're super, super lucky. We had a premiere in Tribeca, and so we saw this on a theater screen for 3 days. And the cast got themselves there. And now that we get to come out, and we're going to be in theaters and on demand on the 2nd. And this is the one that we hope really gets people together to shock them with some twists, some humor, and maybe if they jump a little closer together. Because couldn't we all use that connection right now?
We sure could.
What a great pitch for your movie, honestly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So for our listeners who might not be familiar with AmFad, can you kind of give a little bit of a plot synopsis for them?
Absolutely. Wouldn't you know, 20 years ago, there was a music festival called Karmapalooza. And what happened? Someone unleashed a bit of karma on some kids that went to the concert to have fun, but ended up getting done. Now it's 20 years later, and in 2024, a group of kids from college go to the reboot of Karmapalooza. And you know what hasn't changed much? Sin. And it's also a reboot of the 7 Deadly Sins killer, who just might be back to pass judgment on folks that now give themselves away in their phone, revealing everything about themselves that's shiny, from vanity to gluttony to pride, etc., etc. On August 2nd, the silver screen turns red with #AmFad. All my friends are dead.
Bravo.
Beautiful.
That was perfect.
Beautiful.
It was almost as if you've done this a number of times already.
I'm also on Movie Phone.
Oh man, Movie Phone.
Oh, I do have one thing to say, because we're in this quadrant of it. Please stay through the credits, because we have more twists than a stick of licorice in this one, and we don't stop doling them out until well into those credits. So even if you're on demanding it at home and the window shrinks to the little right-hand corner, click it, see a few names, get some more twists and more movie. We don't stop entertaining until they yank it away.
You sure don't. You're just like, let's keep going. Let's keep doling out some of these twists. But that kind of does lead me, without giving anything away, you hint at a sequel. Is there going to be a sequel, or is it something that you're hoping is going to happen, or
the audience is the arbiter of our possibilities, really. Like, it's one of those things where if you never hear from me again, probably not. If the movie turns a dime, we just might. You never know. But I love the idea of how a movie can leave you with a question, and the question itself is kind of an answer. And that's what the way this particular one goes out. You're like, because we are telling the story of karma and its many wicked forms, many wicked ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm always curious what it's like for a director to work with, like, they're not kids, but they're younger people. They're like this influencer generation. Was it any different working with a majority of like younger actors versus your experiences and other experiences directing in the past?
Thank you for opening the door to talk about this cast, because And any chance I get, I like to say all of their names, the whys and the hows. Because to succinctly answer that question, it's like when you're working with Jade Pettijohn, here's somebody that's been at it for 12 years and is, maybe only in the mid-20s, but this is a practiced, smooth caliber machine. And did you know, I did not, she and JoJo acted together in the School of Rock adaptation on Nickelodeon.
Wait, really?
Oh.
So those two resumed a rhythm and a partnership in that dynamic right away. And so that's a gift. From time to time, you do feel like I've worked with some first timers before that were very first, as in a young kid who hadn't been even on a set before. Well, that's different. But in this case, I want to credit Julian Haig, who plays LB, the one who has a lust for life and ultimately ends up being, quite red in that sort of way. He gathered the Vancouver cast ahead of our shoot. That'd be the awesome Cardi Wong, Justin Derrickson, Jennifer Enns, Jack Dope Smith, and Ali Fumiko Whitney, and they worked on their characters prior to arrival. And so by the time we showed up, because they were the Vancouver folk, we showed up from the Americas, and then they already had their dynamic worked out. They had the modulations done. So that was a lot of heavy lifting. They had experience being the people. So when Jade plays Sarah, who's the outsider of this group, so when she showed up, we took advantage of that awesome organic separation of lines because she is the observer of this group of friends, frenemies. Wait, suspects. Wait, what'd you get me into? Kaboom.
Oh, that's so cool that dynamic actually was a little bit there on set. That's so interesting.
And I was lucky that I was allowed to cast two ringers, two people that I'd worked with 4 times before. So that's Peter Giles, who's the slick agent Rick of the influencers, who is just an absolute kind person who I love making say foul, rude things. And then Michaela Russell, this is the 4th time we've collaborated, and she not only has an awesome performance in the movie, but behind the scenes, she produced all 33 of our original songs. And this is from a long, distinguished career working in South Africa. So, yeah, you look at the median age range, it's like you got a group of youngsters here, but the experience is, kind of older than some trees. And that's pretty cool. We grew our story from that, all starting from a script by Josh Sims and Jessica Serafel.
Yeah, so wow. I was gonna ask you because I first was introduced to you because of Feast, and you've written and you've directed, and I'm curious, how did you get kind of involved with this project as a director instead of as a writer?
So I do not exist without Patrick Melton. He's been I've written with him for over 20 years now, and the only reason I have ever looked good is because he's great. And when it came to this, we each have an executive producer credit, but the guy, our arbiter into this, was Kevin Greuter. So Kevin was the original director of All My Friends Are Dead, but Saw 10, their production really picked up steam. And so when he went for that, this was still coming together. He threw my name into a hat. I auditioned and was grateful.
The Saw is family forever.
Oh, the Saw is definitely family. We wave it proudly. So that's how that came to be, and it's kind of cool. So and then we're back together again on 11 currently.
Wild. I want to dig into like your horror history, but I have to ask because I revisited The Collector and The Collection this weekend.
Thank you.
Is there any news on The Collected?
As of 2 weeks ago, the legal entanglement finally was undone. That's been 5 years. So I kid you not. Tomorrow's my first Zoom about where we're going forward. It's to you telling me. I even have a couple of the taxidermy from the second Collector right here. This is Snowflake and Doc Brown.
Oh, and shit.
They're with me wherever I go. Ever wise, ever observant.
Right next to you in arm's reach whenever you need them.
Whenever I need it.
Always there to offer a helpful paw of support whenever needed.
And I don't know how we ended up with those, but one day we're setting up a shot and there's this knife fight and then like that. And then I was like, I love them. And so in between these long setups with fire and flame bars, we'd make little videos doing their voices called Taxidermy Treats, where they'd teach you about set safety until something went wrong.
I would watch that. I would watch that so much. I want that distributed to every film set. Taxidermy.
Yes.
That's incredible. I love film sets are so insane. They're so fun.
Absolute delight. Just delight. Yeah.
So going back to the beginning of you, how did you get into horror? How did that kind of start for you?
That helix is with the movie because it's entirely first image I can remember being enticed was Gene Simmons gleaming silver demon boots launching towards camera on American Bandstand and spitting fake blood, and it drips down the lens. But I was allowed to read at a young age and even get the copy of Grand Illusions, the Tom Savini makeup special effects book.
Okay.
Oh.
So through that, it was really watching how the magician does something, watching the illusions happen. And then all of a sudden, it was like I had a peek behind the curtain for every horror movie I was watching in the basement as a kid, the seminal ones that teach you how to grow up and to not be the jerk, do drugs, have anything
sex, no premarital sex,
or death, just death, wicked death, and I loved it, and then I saw that this gifted magician of the screen then also, he also does stunts. He acts. He just directed. So the first day I had my driver's permit and I had a Honda scooter with a gizmo on the front from the Gremlins 2 lobby marquee thing. I went to Stars and Stripes Video to rent Night of the Living Dead 1990 and just felt like, wow, what an awesome accomplishment for somebody I've been watching in this very basement through my little years up to then my driver's permit. And he's someone I still he's just never stops inspiring. It's really cool.
He's really awesome. I have to say, between the roles that I've seen him in, the stunts, the makeup design, he's just what a multi-talented, awesome person.
Absolutely, and a really fun actor. Like the roles he kind of plays, that wheelhouse is so cool. And I want to say, wasn't he also in like Meet Earl and the Dying Girl, or something like? It's one of those movies where he's just like in it as a teacher, and it's not asking horror of anything, but it's just so cool to see, this icon.
Perks of Being a Wallflower.
Perks of Being a Wallflower. Thank you. Sorry.
Yes.
Oh God. I'm sorry. Well, that might revoke my Scarred for Life card right there.
Wait, that's so funny that like his number 2 on Letterboxd, like his number 2 popular movie is Perks of Being a Wallflower in his terms of his performances, and that just makes me laugh because of how we all know him, and that just
absolutely.
But awesome too that like he supports film in general, obviously.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Doggone awesome. Yeah.
Wasn't Django Unchained? Good Lord. Anyway.
Yeah. He's with Robert Carradine, and they're when the poor young man is hiding in the tree, and I
totally forgot about that. That's wild.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Anyway.
Wow. So it sounds like horror has kind of been in your DNA from a very young age. Did you get scared watching horror movies often, or?
Certainly. But yet I also love to dissect the what behind it, because I knew was being put upon me. So then I wanted to figure out how. So then I'd sit and rewatch it again, turn the volume off. Okay, well, in that case, the sound had me. Well, then I'll study the special effect and be like, I'm not seeing Kevin Bacon get his Adam's apple popped out. I'm actually seeing, that's a bit of a plaster cast. Okay, there's where the edit is. Boom. And now it's starting to dispel, what the hold that would turn the mind to fear and go blank. Instead, I tried to trick it into opening a door and learn. And that was really awesome. So the one that captivates to this day is, Argento Suspiria, where that's the one I watched through parted fingers, and it was the beautiful color. It just taught me horror could be beautiful. And as the movie we're teeing up to discuss, all that, is like, horror can also educate. Horror can tell you, hold up a mirror. It's not always a window. Sometimes it's a mirror.
Yeah.
Before we talk about your pick, how old were you when you saw Suspiria?
I was definitely too young. So I went to Family Video, and it
yeah.
It had the unrated version, but they had it in Letterboxd, and it was in foreign films right next to Very Innocent Family Fares. Like, it's the one that trickled through. And so when I watched it, uncut, Letterboxd, beautiful, like this VHS tape, and I watched it after everybody went to bed and sat very close to the big old Zenith TV. So It was as big as my perception could be. I loved it. And those
That's
witches, the acting, the goblin
the
score, just
music is just so like I love that. The
fantastic.
music is so good. I showed my husband that movie the first time, and he was like, "I don't understand what I watched, but the vibes were really cool." I'm like, "That's the beauty
Yeah.
of Suspiria."
It's an expression. It is anger. It is beauty. It's a dance. And so no wonder it's about witches running a ballet academy, because it is a dance with your nerves.
Yeah,
And then
absolutely.
is there any movie or do you remember the last movie that really scared you or had an effect, like impacted you at least?
There's one I want to shout out that was quite recent, and it has a masterful sequence in a staircase called Infested. It was the French spider movie. And it's just young man, the crank flashlight. We know the light stops the spiders, and to see them.
So Terry has like Terry is so scared of spiders that if he watched, I told him you can't watch Infested because you will pass away. Like Terry is so
I believe you said
I
will shit my skeleton out, as I believe how you framed it.
That is a beautiful line.
That is how I framed it. I did say that you will shit out your skeleton if you watch this movie. It is very much the anti-Terry. Yeah. Yep. You're free to use someone shitting out their skeleton in a movie, by the way. I don't know how that works from a physical perspective, but like I if you can figure it out, I welcome it. You know what I mean?
It could take all day.
It really could. I don't know how instantaneous it is, but we'll never know. Anyway.
So you just describing that gave me almost a panic attack. Like I'm feeling itchy. So I can understand exactly what you're talking about without having to need to see that movie.
And like Arachnophobia had John Goodman to let us know that, there's humor in the world still. Don't get too scared. Infested doesn't have that. There's no wink to it. It has the same like almost confident brio in the main character's, I'd say, dimmer decisions that escalate a problem. But there is no wryness to it. It is just onslaught. And what a beautiful rendition of it. So if you ever do want that, if you ever do just want to test the old BP, the old ticker, go for it.
Yeah, do one of those tweets that everyone loves. Like, I watch Infested and I died, and then you tweet it and it goes viral, and then everyone watches the movie. So Terry, come on, sacrifice yourself for the greater good.
I mean, why not?
You only live once, right?
Do it for the bit, Terry. We all live in a weird hellscape, so you just got to do it for the bit.
Well, because
the kids
it's
who
so
all
funny.
My friends were dead. Our dad would do it.
Well, I got to do it now. No, but Marcus, it's so funny that you talk about the humor of arachnophobia, because one, arachnophobia is half of the reason this podcast exists.
Oh, great.
And two, when I was a kid, I didn't see anything funny about that movie. As an adult, on a rewatch like this through the entire movie, I understand the humor, but as a kid, there was no humor in that.
No. It was I just, and it's still so impactful. It's so, because everything's practical.
Yeah, it's real.
Like, man, back when you could really do that, and I think you still can. That's what I kind of like about. I think filmmaking is starting to come back around to the idea of like, no, it's better when it's 3D for the actor too. Like, give them a little.
It really is.
So we bent over backwards. Like, this is the first time I had a murder sequence where it required an intimacy coordinator. And, hey, we go for it. And so you get a different kind of performance when everything's real. I'll just say that.
You sure do.
Hell yeah. On that incredible Marcus, what movie have you brought with you today for us to discuss? Because I am so excited to hear.
I wonder if it isn't the one, the only, the original George Romero's Dawn of the Dead. Yes.
Hell yeah. That you actually have on Blu-ray. Wow. Very surprising. Very beautiful.
And to single out discussing the domestic U.S. cut. There you go. Yes.
Oh yeah.
And it's I think for whatever reason, it's the one that introduced me to what I would love about George A. Romero, and it's just one. I was the kid that was lucky enough to rent it and challenge my buddies to see if we could watch it in Joe Wagner's basement in Macomb, Illinois.
Oh my God, I love this, but it's good when you can remember exactly the basement in the exact town, the exact person's name.
Absolutely, and it was just the opening sequence. Everyone was just. We were getting away with something. We were watching this. It was really cool.
Hell yeah. So for anyone who's not familiar with Dawn of the Dead, 1978, during an escalating zombie epidemic, 2 Philly SWAT team members, a traffic reporter and his TV executive girlfriend, seek refuge in a secluding shopping mall.
Yes.
So much more.
So much more.
Obviously.
So much more. All right. So you sort of teed it up a bit, but take us back. How old were you when you saw this? How did you see this? What about it terrified you? I want to hear about this basement. I want to hear all about it. And I think you have a couple other stories that I cannot wait to hear.
Yes, I think this was when we were about, that's 12, 13, 14. And around there. And so you could, it was a rental from what used to be Oscar's. That was a grocery store in Macomb, Illinois. And so they had this copy, and it was the big box VHS with it had a side silhouette of one of the deads, getting upright. And so on this day, it was like we would watch things and get together. Now at the same time, courtesy of a marvelous world history teacher named Sue Ellen Rickelman, we were able to turn in videos in high school instead of papers for world history. So,
okay, coolest teacher ever.
Yeah.
Just marvelous. And so I was fortunate. Chad Fess and I both had camcorders, and mine was a gift from my grandmother, the same grandmother who gave me permission at Journey Comics to read Fangoria when I was too young. Said the kid reads whatever he wants. The same grandmother who procured me my first set of fake body parts that then became the props for these movies. So now, jumping into what happened. So the cast was also, the cast of all these was watching, Dawn of the Dead. So now, concurrent, Journey Comics ordered me a book called The Zombies That Ate Pittsburgh that I could then read, and I could read about George Romero. And in there, he tells this story, and I'm going, oh yeah, that's a great idea of how he pulled off an effect, and he was almost arrested for it, but okay, fine. And it involved setting a body on fire and throwing it off a roof in a city. Like,
no.
That's what we need. So I didn't learn anything from this. That was a good lesson. So here's the video. Here's what we did. Now, where this takes place is this is from a film captured on RCA camcorder called Killer, and I'm about to attack Mark Louderman. I play the killer, and wouldn't you know, I don't know if I'm going to get away with it or I'm even going to succeed if there's a witness nearby. Score courtesy of Black Rain by Hans Zimmer. This is the 19 seconds where we learned, unfortunately, that Joe Wagner's house also was in a patrolway, and a cop was going by right when we shot this, and you'll see why we were stopped. Oh, wait, shoot. Sorry. Hang on. Here we go. It's worth the suspense. Here we go. The first line is, why you?
Oh, no. Oh.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay. So the call came into the police. Someone at the Wagner household is throwing kids off the roof. and that was Joe's G.I. Joe snowsuit that we stuffed with clothes, taped a basketball to the head, and it's movie magic, So then we go from celebrating beautiful filmmaking to sitting on the curb about to produce our skeletons before Johnny Law. Thank you, George Romero. Still love you.
Wow.
He really taught you. He said, at least you thought he said, try it. It'll be fine.
Sure.
Wait, how old were you at this point?
That you're looking at 14, I think 14, 15 around there.
All right. That's like prime filming in your backyard and getting caught by the cops when you were doing something pretty innocent, but it did not look innocent.
It didn't. And I would like to think because of the raw talent.
Raw special effects talent you already had coursing through your veins. Yeah, I agree. You really chucked that body. You really chucked that body though, and it's so funny. It doesn't look like a person. I love that you can tell that it's like ragdolling. But again, if you're far away, you don't know. I guess.
Wow. It was. Hey,
that's beautiful. Magic. I love movies. That is movie making magic.
Oh my gosh!
I wanted to be a worthy contribution to your show. That's scarred for life, but also a badge of honor.
That's perfect. That is perfect. What was your experience watching it though, for that first time? Do you remember, like, did it were there specific scenes that jumped out at you, or like what about it has lingered in your head for so long?
It was one that actually resonated in the sense that there are a couple of horror movies that'll visit you in your nightmares.
Mm.
And Dawn of the Dead did, because I would be in the rafters in the air conditioning ducts, only they'd be popping up the fan cover here. They'd be another thick shape was coming at that end, another set of hands coming from this end, and you just knew sitting still was death, moving in any direction was worse. That feeling. And there occasionally you just hear the heavy footfalls, start to hear the once again goblin dun 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 dun, that wonderful score that sounded like an electronic pulse from the other world.
Yeah.
Their pulse, their march, they're coming. And I thought that's where it would tend to visit me. And also, this is a movie that never stops talking. So, for example, like when I watched it to prepare for this, the first time I saw it, I would say I was watching an exciting horror movie, and it was the special effects, and it was the gore, and it was as a kid, so it was the prism of can you take this drive-in movie sensation? Can you go for the ride? And yes, there was also almost like a comic book feel to the fast cutting. It was like you could see the love put into the horror, in the sense that these were friends, and then a little bit of research. Oh man, if you were in Pittsburgh that year, you just went by the Monroeville Mall, they'd paint you up, and you could be a zombie for the night with your friends. Friggin' awesome. So there was all of this like marvelous bonding happening, and the materials used to make that movie were materials we could get a hold of. By the time I went to school in Iowa, I had cameras, access to the film cameras and the film stock that was 16 millimeter. The whole reason I shot The Collector on 16 millimeter was in honor of George Romero. And wanted a little less grain, wanted the saturated colors, wanted to push into the world of that, beautifully lensed by Brandon Cox, where we pushed, because I wanted more Argento in there, the wonderful producer, co-producer of Dawn of the Dead. So here's this bold vision collaborating with George, and it's like there were two worlds that came together. It looked like a group of friends making a horror movie with something to say. So now if I could fast forward to what it was like watching it this time, is Galen Ross plays the character of Francine. I think she's usually just called Fran. So her arc, and I wrote down these notes, like there's this woman who takes charge. And as an actor in the movie, she refused to scream. So the only time she ever kind of does something is in that opening. She goes, ah, when she wakes up, but never screams. This is a big moment in so many words. This is not someone who cowers and shrinks. In fact, right away in her first scene, Fran defies the loudest voice in the room. It's kill him, Dick. Tell Gibbons to see me. Right in the time you're looking at, you can forget pitching an audience the moral bullshit they want to hear. Aren't we starting to sound like the discourse happening today? Now, what else happens with Fran? It doesn't matter what's on the screen. Keep those rescue stations up. We can't keep inoperative rescue stations up. If you don't, people will tune out. Doesn't matter if it's true. Keep them watching. Yeah. It starts sounding like today. And then we get into our responsibility is finished. And we cut to where? This hotel, where a racist SWAT commander starts to lose it because the immigrants and the minorities are in this luxury housing, and he's struggling on the outskirts, and he's going in with a shotgun and laying the law down until George Romero Justice shows up, and you get Ken Follett taking charge and bonding with Scott over this awesome betrayal of many. And I don't mean awesome as in cool. I mean awesome as in like what a staggering fall of law in the tapestry of this. And what do they find in the basement along bodies? Yes, it's horror, but they also find the one-legged priest. Why did they do this? Because they still believe there's honor in dying.
Yeah.
They have been given their last rites. Now you do what you will. We must stop the killing, or we will lose the war. What's it sound like? Yesterday or today? It's
right now. Right now.
By all means, I can jump back into this. I keep on going. Or if you want me to keep going?
I love it.
Okay. Please.
So check this out. Then we bounce and we see a depiction of, I think, who is probably, they were kind of depicting the Romero version of like National Guard, the civilian army. But no, there's a song playing that guides us to think that this is a bit more Heartland gone wrong, taking photos, making a party out of eliminating the other. And then the lyrics to the song called "'Cause I'm a Man." Do you know what the lyrics are? Don't believe in overworking, and I don't treat a woman right because I'm a man, because I'm a man. I like to be the center of attraction. Let the people know just who I am. Like my movie shows with lots of action. Take my beer straight from the can because I'm a man. I'm a man. Right? What are we saying? And who do they cut to watching this? Fran.
Yep.
And this is when Ken Foray gives an assessment of who they are. They're not above them. Wake up, sucker. We're thieves and we're bad guys. That's who we are. We got to find our own way. So we've got kind of our nucleus for what society has become in the face of this. There's people that can just dispel probably the last bit of justice to a SWAT team commander gone nuts. Scott's with him, a buddy who's like, hey, I'm going to show you a way out of here. Great. But in doing so, we're kind of giving away the rules of the world. What world do we want to make? What world do we deserve? So we find them all. And now here's where Fran really does take over, and it still starts sounding like today. She doesn't want to be left without a gun. She doesn't want to be alone without a gun. And she's not buying her protector Stevens BS. And this group together goes from spam to caviar in the space of 24 hours as they take over the mall. And then we learn Fran is pregnant. Now, do you remember what happens here? It's Ken because talking to Steven. Do you want to abort it? They're not talking to Fran. And yet Romero wisely cuts to Fran overhearing the two men talk about her body. And you're like, am I talking about yesterday or am I talking about today?
It was really a frustrating watch this time because of seeing how little things have changed since the 70s. Now, I will say that I was surprised at how unavailable this movie is for streaming. And I was
very
lucky
funny because I literally had a conversation with someone at the film festival about it last night at the bar about this movie and how hard it is to find. So it was very copacetic or very serendipitous in terms of the conversations.
Well, is it not having like a 45th anniversary theatrical?
So it had a 45th. So the guy who holds the rights is notoriously incredibly grumpy. I forgot his name. I apologize, but he owns rights to a bunch of Romero's movies, and the U.S. rights specifically, and he won't give them to anybody. So he did give some people like access for a 45-year screening, but he won't give anyone access to do a new Blu-ray print or put it on streaming. He's just like keeping it very close to his chest.
Okay, goodness.
Yeah. So the reason why I bring this up is that I sort of teased listeners. You can't see this at home, but
yes,
I have this 4K Blu-ray from Midnight Factory. It's an overseas release. And I bought it because I was like, I didn't realize until this cut of the movie came out that there was a European cut that was edited by Argento, and because he was a co-producer, and so he was able to cut it and use Goblin score more, and basically he cut it down to, I think it's like 119 minutes, so it's like just under 2 hours from being like 2 hours and 16, I think is the normal cut, and he cuts out a whole lot. And so I wanted to watch the American version, but I could not find it, and this is the only copy I have, and only one Blu-ray on here is 4K. I don't have an international or the Region Zero player. Sure. So I was like, I have to watch the European cut. I'd been wanting to, but I was kind of open to watch the original cut because I was assuming that was the cut that you came up with as a kid. But I'll tell you, there's a lot that is cut out of this, like the song you're talking about. So there's a lot that I feel like I'm still missing from that original cut of the film, because it has been a very long time since I've seen this movie. But this was a very fun watch, but boy, a different movie.
Yes. And you know how I revisited it? YouTube. It's got a nice 4K link to it. And it's like I pay for a YouTube subscription, so I don't think it's a dastardly one. I think for some reason they just have it on there alongside an extended cut and a whatnot cut. But hey, there it is, and it looked great, sounded great. Okay. I'm assuming it was legit. I hope it was legit.
That was the one I watched, was the one on YouTube, because I couldn't find it anywhere. I don't own it. And I mean, it looked great and it sounded great. Like the sound's a little weird, but I also just could be, a sound mix, because that's the one I watched and it looked great. So again, that's the only place you can find it. and I don't own it, so there was no other way to watch it. But again, it looked good. They put a good version up there, and I'm glad no one's taken it down yet.
Very, very nice. So then, how about this? Remember the line, forget Canada. We're not going to Canada. We set up house here. And the TV, we need a workable vaccine attempt. We must treat this like a virus. And Fran announces she doesn't want to be everybody's den mother. She doesn't want to be the maid. She wants to learn how to fly that helicopter. Because if something happens to the arrogant men, what's she going to do? She's looking out for two. They're only looking out for themselves. And then that key point when Roger kind of loses it in the power takeover. Now they're building their kingdom, and he's in the trucks. And he kind of goes into shock, losing it, not unlike the predecessor. Not unlike now they're looking at the potential invaders of their paradise. It has that great bit where like, hey, Roger, are you straight? Perfect, baby. Perfect. And like using the vernacular straight to mean like, are you clear-headed? Yep. Not any other intonation. And so it's almost like in that moment, the coping mechanism is Roger is using his arrogance not to feel. And yet the downfall is when you subdue your humanity. So like, is another lesson we talking about yesterday? We talking about today? Stephen, in the meantime, steps up. He wants to fight for this place, the stolen kingdom. In the meantime, Roger gets, what happens, and I'm going to try so hard not to come back. Now, here's another line that knocked me out. And it was this, the gentleman with the eye patch on the TV. For all I know, the brains are all dead, and it's the idiots who are still alive.
I feel like I hear someone say that every day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel like everyone says that. I feel like I've heard so many people say something like that recently. So like,
yeah. And if I may, I'm sorry. This is a passionate topic. I've got a little bit.
I love it. No,
please.
This sounds like a bunch of people talking without actually thinking about it. Now, at the same time, it's like, did Bill Maher somehow time travel and provide dialogue in this debate on this show? Because here's the response. This is not Republicans versus the Democrats who got us in a hole economically, or we're in another war. This is more crucial than that. We are down to the line, folks. We are down to the line. There are no divisions among living society. Like, whoa, are we talking about yesterday? Are we talking about today?
It's wild. It's so, because this was my first time ever actually watching Dawn of the Dead, the original one.
Yeah. Oh, really?
I had never seen it before. The original one. I'd seen the remake, the Zack Snyder one, but again, it's hard to find. So I just it never really came up. And I knew I wanted to see it. I knew I needed to see it for like a million different reasons. It just blew me away. Like everything about it is still so prescient. Everything about it looks good. Like, yes, the zombies are low budget looking, but I love the look of them. It's and I know that and again, it's really interesting watching this for the first time now and seeing how I was like, oh, I know that trope, but it's because of this movie that we have those tropes. This was the first movie about the shooting in the head, right? Was this the first time that it was?
They discover it in Night.
In Night. Okay, I was trying to remember just because I know that those movies established lore like about like the new kind of zombie, but just amazing how zombies are used and are scary in this movie. Like I was actually anxious, like not super scared, but like there's some really good moments. And I especially love at the beginning. It's just in the beginning, but it was something so simple, but it was a zombie climbs on top of a crate and they just cut the helicopter blade just very quickly slices off the top of his head and he falls over. And I just feel like that's so contemporary. Like, you know what I mean? Like of having just like that's a quick kill like that in such like kind of like unattached way. And having that in this movie in 78 is just so, it's like, you can really see how Romero was really operating like he's doing like fucking 4D chess with everyone's brains with these movies. You know what I mean? Just because like,
yes.
And then we have another moment that was really powerful is when Ken Ford gets attacked by those little boys at the beginning, and he's so quick to shoot them, and then you get that very quick moment of him just looking at the bodies of like, who the fuck am I now? Like,
yes.
I think these movies do such a good job of
and
very quickly showing the humanity.
This guy comes walking in, Oh
shit!
Yes.
It's weird how where they put the benchmarks visually. Here's another interpretation done by the great Aaron Moreno. His line is
so cool.
Awesome stuff. And speaking of Mr. Savini, get your very own machete.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great line. Anyway, but yes, that moment is like shock upon shock, and also Stephen doesn't quite have the poise and training of the SWAT or the discipline with the weapon. and they're learning that, and it's all how kind of power and whatnot starting to lose its boundary, and then that other boundary that gets shattered when we get closer to our. It almost has a 90-minute second act where we're watching just time with the world in the mall.
Yeah.
And Stephen proposes to Fran, and she says, "Why? Marriage isn't real anymore."
I love a bitch who is practical, because I think Barb in Night of the Living Dead is very much like the scream, the catatonic, very much like the woman damsel in distress. And I was worried that was what happened with Fran, because as I watch these movies and she's getting like pulled around a little bit. But then as we were talking about, it changed, like it's not that at all. And I kind of love how Romero is always, I think, thinking about that. Because again, and then we also have a black lead again in a movie of his. And I love that, maybe he wasn't as, I'm not a huge expert in Romero. I don't know if he was like totally thinking that, but I also think he was like, he's such a smart guy. And obviously casting Ben in Night of the Living Dead and then Ken Foree here, it's just really cool to see like how he's thinking and how he's operating as a director.
This answers so many of those things, because
I should read that. Yeah.
I'm halfway through it.
It's just amazing.
Cool.
It's that again, only this time he's saved the ending for the end, and this is the end. It's got a solution to it, or a denouement, to use a it is, and it does keep telling the story of the person outside the chain of command, and be it in a family role, be it in a societal role, or be it in a militarized role. Like I'm thinking of I don't know if you've gotten to the part of the young man who's just on his bicycle riding through poverty, the young girl who's waiting for her dad to come home, the woman who's on an aircraft carrier. The characters of that are all, they're satellites of the core of what is deemed to be power in the downfall of any power.
Those are my favorite kinds of stories, those kinds of things, of people outside of a chain of command who are just everyday people just like trying to live through unprecedented times, which unfortunately we're also living through right now. And how we're all just trying to keep our shit together in the face of a nightmare.
Well, and doesn't that also hold hands with the philosophy of the bikers in the mall, where it's about right now. It's not about the future. It's about the moment right now. It is pillage. It is take. It is raid. It is move. Keep going. Keep moving. They're the professional army of the road now, and it's just like, wow. You can see how you could be every single person in this movie at any given time. It's kind of like that's what life does to you, with all its various circumstances and pitfalls and terrifying moments and moments of bliss and hope and happiness. And as the bikers kind of become violence incarnate, it's Steven saying, "This is ours. This is ours." The one who is just like, and then Peter's left with the worst question of all: do I face death, or do I take a chance on living? It's the question of his at the beginning, and it's the question of his at the end. And like, can you imagine just the poetry of, he gives his gun. Because maybe in that moment he'll stop some killing and maybe win the war. The war is just getting on a chopper, and it ends with nothing. How much fuel do we have? Not much. All right.
Well, we'll see how far we can take us. No, but what I love on this rewatch, and I think a lot of it was probably cut out too, because from what I understand, that the differences in the cut is Argento made it more actiony and took out a little bit more of the humor and took out a little bit more of the satirization parts of it. And so, but I remember them spending a lot of time in the mall, and I got some of that in here where they, they're cleaning up the mall. It's sort of like the hierarchy of need. Like they clean up the mall, and then once they're safe and secure, then all of a sudden it's like they're having the caviar, they're having the intimate dinner, they're going shopping for new watches and new clothes and all that kind of stuff. And it's interesting to me how like quickly we're able to try to cope with this new situation, but also how we still have that fascination with consumerism, with capitalism, with these things that no longer mean anything. There's that moment, I can't remember who it was, maybe was it one of them, when they go to the bank and there's all that money in there, and they're like, what's the point of all of this now? But they still are like, there's the camera angle of them like, holding up the money as if they're robbing the bank type of thing. And it's just there's so much of that in here where it's like the moment that they're safe and they feel secure, it's like we revert back to the things that in a way kind of might have brought us here in some ways.
And they
I also
all,
think it's like, oh, sorry.
I was just say they all try on different lives. Fran learns, she rebonds with Steven. Everyone's role breaks and they form into new people. Victories have changed. And they have champagne, but when Peter, it's just kind of heart sore when Peter elects to sit with his dead friend, while everyone else is having a fancy dinner. No, paradise is fake, even in that world. But you can change, you can hope. You can change,
you can hope, and then the motorcyclists come in and ruin your day on a lark. Sorry, Mary Beth, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
It's such a fascinating look at like how capitalism really does affect us in every aspect, like and how a lot of our identities and like who we are as people are wrapped up in capitalistic ideas. And like, and then like to put it in to like simplify it, I mean, just how much we love to consume and how much we love to buy things and how our ability to purchase and have items gives us value in the world. And I think this movie really hammers that home again in 1978 when we were like, not necessarily communism scary, but still like we're not that far away from that era of like people being scared of communists and being afraid of anything that threatens the status quo. And I think Romero, like I've always known this, but hearing about it, but watching it really is incredible, especially lines with like, they're here because it's what they are familiar with. They have comfort here and like, cool. So that's where we want to go when we die is go to the mall to go shopping. Like that's so sad, but also like capitalism makes us all like emotionless ghouls. So it is like a really beautifully gross, fucked up look at how much we are really shaped by capitalism.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
And yet the thought I had as I was watching this now is I don't get nostalgic for much, but I was nostalgic for malls.
Yes. Wouldn't it be nice if we had that? Like, what are we supposed to do now? Go to Costco?
No more second spaces. It's so sad. Nowhere for us to hang out. It's either our houses or work. Guys, please, we need other places to hang out.
Yeah, it actually, you know what? It would be Costco. And I kid you not, I read a zombie script not that long ago that had a set piece at a Costco where one folk was stuck there, the other folks were stuck at like the pharmacy, and who could get to who.
Oh my God. The $1.50 hot dog will persevere in the face of the apocalypse.
it's but my gosh, no, you nailed it with the melancholy of not having a readily available mall scenario. And yet there's still some out there. There's some beautiful ones. I went to Irvine, California, has one that it really is a modest utopia. But it's not the same as the one I would go, the Springfield Mall, the Galesburg Mall, like that.
Oh yeah, the Annapolis Westfield Mall. That's exactly like the one, like where I grew up. Yes. And it's just like had the skylights that you look down and see with like the fountain and all that shit. That was like, had the department store and all that thing. Like
absolutely. And it was kind of where we could go and hide from time a little bit. If it was the winter, you could put on your tracksuit and still walk and get in your steps.
And maybe get thrown off of a roof by a kid.
Maybe. If you had to. If things got a little testy, you betcha.
You never know.
Off the roof you go.
Childhood. So we are nearing the end of our time. So I think it's probably best to wrap up, Terry, you think?
Yeah, I think we are coming up very quickly on the end.
As much as I think we all could talk about this movie for hours on end, and we could dive so hard into it. But so we're gonna give this our rating out of 5 to wrap up and start wrapping up. So Terry, you're gonna go first. How many abandoned what did I say? Abandoned sites. Why did my brain just stop working? I'm so sorry. Brain broke. Abandoned shrines to capitalism. How many abandoned shrines to capitalism out of 5 do you give Dawn of the Dead, 1978?
I mean, it's hard not to give it 5. I think this movie is fantastic. I really want to get, I think Second Sight just released like a collector's edition of it, and it's on 4K, so like I don't have to worry about not having the right Blu-ray player because they're all region free. So I'm thinking about buying that and rewatching the original cut, because as much as I loved hearing more Goblin, more seeing Argento's thing, I want to revisit what this movie meant to me as a kid, because I loved this movie as a kid. This was one that I would constantly go back to, more so than Night of the Living Dead, because as a kid I was like, black and white, I don't want to watch that. And this was in color, and the zombies were scary and they were different, and it was just this is a quintessential movie from my childhood that I absolutely love, and it has been way too long since I've seen it. But on this rewatch, the one thing that jumped out at me is the very famous quote about when there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth. And it's an ominous line, it's scary, but I was thinking about it as like, what is that really telling us? It is telling us that there are more people in hell, in this fictitious idea of like how heaven and hell. There's more people being punished for their sins than there are people in this idea of heaven. And I was like, that in itself is the fact that their idea is that the dead is coming back, and the dead is us, and the dead is our sins, our horribleness coming back to consume us, is more frightening than I even really gave credit for. Like, it's a great line, but I never really thought about it until this watch. So there's so much in this movie. We didn't even get to talk much about the Zack Snyder's remake, which I find to be one of the best, one of the great remakes. We have to give it up
I agree.
to James Gunn. His script is fantastic too.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, this movie is 5 out of 5. What about you, Mary Beth?
Well, as someone who has the opposite, has like no nostalgia for this movie, it's a 5 out of 5. I think it is a perfect zombie movie. I could understand why people like this more than Night of the Living Dead, because I feel like Romero kind of had a bit more confidence as a filmmaker here. He had more resources, definitely, and he had so many opportunities to make such cool shots, like an abandoned mall. Are you fucking kidding me? And as a kid, I played Left 4 Dead 2, and they always had the mall level, and I always loved the mall level. So I was getting taken back to then, because again, like we had the mall level in that game because of this movie. So I'm watching it and just like realizing how much of my childhood was influenced by a movie that I have never seen, which is so fucking cool and incredible to finally, it's always cool when you watch a movie and it's like a puzzle piece in your history of as a horror person, even if you hadn't seen it, like it really kind of solidifies a picture. And I just love everything about this, and I need to watch it again because I obviously probably missed things. But yeah, it's a 5 for me. And Marcus, you have the final word. I think I know your answer, but how many abandoned shrines to capitalism do you give Dawn of the Dead?
What rhymes with not alive? That's 5.
Hey.
5. And in a little Romero-ish shrine, courtesy of Aaron Moreno of Retro Band, who made these awesome creep show figures and whatnot. And there's actually a fluff.
So cool.
But
it's so cool.
So in this little creative space here, I always wanted to look in every corner and be inspired by something. So if I ever felt I was in a corner, be it from a writing demand or just like a production problem, it's the history that gives us the answers. And I think Dawn of the Dead is a vital part of history. And guess what? It's the history that's still talking to us. And isn't that amazing that such a gifted voice in George Romero is still teaching? So he is forever. 5 out of 5.
Fuck yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, thank you so much, Marcus, for joining us to talk about Dawn of the Dead. Are you online? Where can our listeners find you? And the floor is yours to plug away with whatever you can talk about.
I keep most of my stuff private just because I want please see the movie. If I post a photo you don't like, don't take it out on the movie. Find the movie. The new one, #AmFed, All My Friends Are Dead, is a group of strangers went up to Canada and emerged old friends. We've brought you something that is a twisty-turny murder mystery I swear you won't figure out. Please stay through the end credits, and if you're so fortunate to be near a silver screen, we turn it red with #AmFed, All My Friends Are Dead, Friday, August 2nd. Thank you.
See you guys. It's fun.
Take care. Thanks, Guard for Life.
Woo!
Hey, that was great, guys. Thank you.
Real quick, we have to just do an outro so fast. I'm so sorry.
Sure.
So listeners, you've heard from us. We want to hear from you. What was your experience with Dawn of the Dead, 1978, or Zack Snyder's remake? I want to hear both. Send us an email at scarredforlifepodcast@gmail.com or reach out to us on social media. I'm at mb.mcandrews on Instagram and at mbmcandrews on Twitter.
And I'm at Gaily Dreadful everywhere.
Don't forget to follow the podcast at Scarred Podcast on Blue Sky and Twitter, and at Scarred for Life Podcast on Instagram.
And please don't forget to review, rate, and subscribe. And if you want to help support us, we do have a Patreon.
Thank you to Eric Power for our artwork. Thank you to Sean Keller for our music. Thank you everyone for listening. Please stay safe out there. Most importantly, stay creepy.
And until next time.